My name's Derek. You've seen my truck parts on Insane Diesel's Instagram and Dave's Auto Center's YouTube channel. 892,000 mile motor, 892,000 miles CP4 pump. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly what year I started using the Insane Diesel filter. It was sometime probably 2013, 2014-ish. Probably 2014 on a 2011 F350. I stumbled across bypass filtration, ultra filtration, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube. I thought it was pretty interesting to make my truck last 2 to 3 times as long as a normal truck, which of course is important when you're spending, 50, 75, 100, 110,000 on these things. And B, save money on oil changes. I mean, if you use synthetic oil all the time, didn't have Lorenzo's oil back then, so, but it was still expensive for synthetic oil. Insane Diesel used to have a product, an additive to add to your oil that the previous owner, John, had said that NASA used it in the crawler for the space shuttle to get it to the big machine they used to drive it to the launch pad. Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, if NASA uses it, there's some pretty smart people. So, but the biggest reason was to make it last longer and to save money on oil changes, basically. When I first started, of course, old school, so I changed my oil and tested it every 5,000 miles. So I threw a lot of oil, good oil away that I didn't need to throw away. I understand, and everybody out there who's gonna watch this, they're gonna think the same thing. It doesn't make sense. Go 10, 15, 20, 25,000 miles with the same oil. When you get to that point, you're pretty mad at yourself for all the money you wasted and everything you threw away. I went 5,000 for a while, then I went 10,000, but still tested it at 5. And then I went to 15, tested it at 10, 5, 10, 15, and I change it at 15 now because I figure, you know what? I'm playing with house money, saving 2 oil changes. So what's that, $400, $500, whatever. So great. Good. So I do, that's once a month for me, an oil change. So, maybe every 4 to 6 weeks is an oil change. So I pick campers up in Indiana and bring them to different camper dealers all around the country.
That's how you get 900,000 miles on a truck.
A 2017.
A 2017 truck.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of people that comment on there, oh, he would never get this mile if he drives in the city. Maybe not. Maybe, if I live to 120, maybe, if with the same truck, if I just drove the city driving. But with all the stop and start and everything, the bypass filter will still be good for you in the city. Probably more so than for me. It paid for itself within, a year? I mean, less than a year. So by doing my oil changes every 15,000 miles, even though it still tests fine and I don't have to, and maybe, who knows, with this, so I have a new engine in the truck now, of course, because you saw the other one being ripped apart. Maybe I'll stretch it and see, just go by oil analysis strictly.
Are you changing the filters at least every 5 and 10,000 before
No,
you
15.
change the oil? Okay, so
15.
you're changing the filter every 15.
Filter and oil at 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what I've been doing is I change all the filters, fuel, transmission, spin on oil, and then bypass filter. I do that every 10, but I leave the oil in it.
Okay.
And I take a sample. So I take a sample, I get it tested, and then I change all the filters.
Yeah.
If the test is good. If the test's not good, then I drain the oil. But I haven't had a bad test yet.
So when I started changing the oil and the filters at 15K, I started reducing my analysis to 7,500 instead of 5,000.
Okay.
So I tested 7,500 and then I tested 15,000 and changed the oil filters at that point. And and saving the money.
You're saving all kinds of money.
And saving the money has been, so it's well worth it, because I mean, I'm rounding up, okay, because they're not this expensive, but with an installation, because I'm not a mechanical type guy, so it was probably $900 or so with installation, and 2 oil changes is I save 1,000 because I do it every 15,000 miles, so I save 4 oil changes at $250 a piece or whatever it is. So around there. So 2 oil changes, I save the money right there. So it's definitely worth it for that. But then if you take into account that I get 892,315.7 miles out of it. So that's a lot of driving, a lot of miles, a lot of fuel, a lot of oil changes, but not as many as it would have been.
And not only did you get that far, but literally the internals of your engine were not worn.
Yeah, that was pretty neat because I've never seen anything like that. You know, like I'm fascinated by all this stuff, and so it was really cool to see that on video. I mean, they tore apart CP4 pump when I was there, when I dropped it off, but they did the engine. What was it, New Year's Eve or something, or Christmas Eve, something like that. And so I wasn't there, of course. You know, that was November 20th, and that was December 31st or whatever. So, but when I saw it on video, I was like, oh, I wish I was there, because it was so neat. Because I would have never thought, like, when you were looking at the main bearings and it was all the red coating on there, I was like, oh, okay, that's what they're supposed to look like. But then you heard Dave or you guys are like, no, it's not supposed to look like that. It's supposed to be
not with
copper,
that many miles.
you know,
not with that many miles,
right? Wearing through everything, and then what's the other one? Rod bearings, right?
Yep, rod bearings.
So there's a push side you were explaining, and that only was missing 1/1000 of an inch. I mean, 1/1000 of an inch.
It will hold 100 times more weight than on like a rolling part than just a regular oil.
Than just oil, because the oil collapses.
Yeah. And so it'll smash
So
all
with
the oil out.
the Nano WS2, it actually carries it and holds the oil film between your bearing and your journal.
Yes.
And then not only does it hold it, but then it sheds that layer of tungsten or of WS2 onto both the bearing and the journal. It literally, it's like it polishes both of them to where there aren't any rough surfaces for the oil to lose contact. So you've polished the journal and you've polished the bearing, and then on top of that, you're riding on the WS2 in the oil, so you never wear out. But you need to have the bypass filter as well to get rid of all the contaminants. So you have a 1 micron bypass filter keeping your oil clean, so you never get sandy. I mean, it's not, I say sand. It is so much finer than sand. It's grit. And if it's never in there, there's never anything to wear into your bearing. So your bearings don't wear out. The grit never compromises the bearings. And then on top of that, the WS2 coats it. It's a double standard of, it's a double protection.
That's something, as a novice with all this, one thing I could tell as a novice is that my oil, the way it felt before this filter and the way it feels after. It's really remarkable.
You can't feel the grit in it anymore.
Yeah, soot or whatever the grit is. It's just amazing how smooth it is. But really, the inside of the engine is really remarkable. I mean, that's so, for someone that doesn't know anything about this, that was just amazing. To see it on a screen, let alone, I wish I could have been there to see it.
When he popped that main bearing cap, and it still had like that red coating on the bearing, it was just jaw-dropping. Like, are you kidding me? It didn't even scratch it.
Well, I loved when he was holding the rod bearings, right? He's like looking at it. You can see when you're watching YouTube, you see him, he's thinking, like, this can't be. That's what Dave was thinking. He didn't say it because he was sitting there and you could see him. You could see the wheels turning. And then he just goes like this. We're going to see exactly how much we're off. And he just walks off and he goes to measure it. And then he measured it and I was like, yeah, wow, that's amazing.
The key to that is clean oil, which the bypass filter accomplishes. Then you have the coating that keeps it smooth and carries the weight, so you don't have any wear. So it reduces friction, creates the layer of a coating on it that carries all the load and the weight, and then the clean oil keeps all the dirt from wearing it all off.
Then the additive helps too, not just with that.
It is kind of a package
it helps
deal.
in the combustion chamber.
Yeah, so it helps in the combustion chamber. So the additive encapsulates the diesel molecules, which keeps them entrained in the air, keeps them from sticking to cylinder walls, keeps them from sticking to pistons and heads, and then creates a more complete burn inside of your cylinder. So you create less soot in your engine for your piston rings to drag into your oil. They all help each other. Every aspect of our products add value. It's in the oil industry they call it synergy. One adds upon the other. So as a full package deal, the oil, the bypass filter, and the fuel additive keep your engine clean, which keeps it from wearing itself out.
Right, and just to keep it real, I use the Ford cetane, Ford's fuel enhancer. And the last couple 100,000, 150, 175, also had the Lorenzos in it. It had both. And I think that's why the pistons were so clean. There wasn't a lot of carbon. There wasn't any, what is it called, ring wash on top. I mean, Dave, you saw him in the video. It was silver. He just went with his thumb. And it was polished.
And that's tungsten as well.
Okay.
The tungsten actually creates that lack of friction in your cylinder walls and on your piston rings. So the WS2 in the oil is actually creating that coating on your cylinder walls and against your piston rings to where it's not wearing that out. And it's sealing it, so you're not even getting the blow-by from your compression into your crankcase.
And the oil rings were clear. I mean,
and all of those little tiny orifices.
I didn't even know they were there. That's how I'm a novice at this. I didn't even know those things were there. And then he was like, "Oh, you can still see the holes." And I was like, "I didn't even know they were going to be there, and now I can see them." I was like, "This is great. This is fantastic." But yeah, all those things you said were key. But also, it's here too. If you don't drive like an idiot, you know, everything, you don't beat on your equipment. That's going to help it too. Everything all works together. Your foot, your brain, your additives, the way you filter your stuff, the oil you use. I mean, everything. It all works together. Maybe you might get away with taking one of those things out of the equation, but if you have them all, then you should have pretty good luck. I mean, but they are machines. Stuff's going to happen. I mean, it's going to happen.
Well, look at your lifters.
Right. Yeah.
Your lifters fail.
Yeah.
Metal wears out.
Yeah.
It'll only run for so long. But not very many people get 893,000 miles out of it.
I wish they wouldn't have failed.
So we may think about having to do a top end at 800,000 miles now. Change lifters.
Yeah, so on this truck I have the extreme bypass filter. So the return comes out of there and it goes through my oil cooler first. And then it goes from my oil cooler back up into the oil fill.
And then
pretty much all the suspension parts have been changed. Not pretty much, I'm sure they all have. Wheel bearings have been done half a dozen times. Shocks have done 3 times. I think I've done 5 or 6 windshields.
That's it?
Yeah, well, I fix the chips, and then once they build up, then I do it.
Yeah.
A couple.
I'd be curious to know how many sets of tires you've gone through.
Yeah, well, they last. You know, it's different because sometimes if I puncture it and they're like half gone, then I can't, because of the 4-wheel drive, I need to have them pretty close. So then I end up getting But when everything goes perfectly, I think the most I've ever gotten was like 130, maybe 130,000.
Have a set of tires?
Yeah, maybe 120, somewhere between 100 and 130.
Although I've never had set hybrid tires on my truck.
Yeah. Well, I only usually use those in the summer, but I had to have 7 months off 2 years ago, so I had my knees replaced. So, you know, pinch pennies where I can. So.
Yep.
And then of course my engine goes, but it was the original transmission too for the 893,000 miles. So I just switched it when I switched the motor because I figure I'll save about $1,000 in labor while they're taking it all apart. Might as well just pop a new transmission in too. When the warranty is done on my transmission from this new one, I'm going to put an aftermarket transmission pan so I can put a insane diesel extreme filter on my transmission too. So, because of course there's ways to retrofit that. But I change my coolant and my transmission fluid and filter every 50,000 miles, no matter what. If something happened with my coolant or hose and I had to drain it and change it, then I would just change the transmission filter and the fluid at the same time because I like to keep them on the same schedule. It's just easier for me to work it out in my head. Anytime the oil filters came out, the fuel filters came out too. When it was getting near the end, I think I knew the lifter was failing, but I didn't know what it is because I pardon me, but I didn't know what a lifter was. You know, I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. But I know I was hearing noises. When you're in the truck, in a vehicle that long, you know when things don't sound like they're supposed to sound. And I knew stuff wasn't sounding right for about a year. Wasn't severe. I also didn't have a ton of extra cash because I had just had some surgeries and I had a bunch of time off from work. So I just babied it more. And with those lifters failing, I got it to last a year anyway, or maybe a little less.
So just by hearing that, I would say that you're gonna know when to change those lifters next time.
Oh, I think so.
Like without letting the engine go down, you're gonna say,
Time
I
for
need to get
top
my
end.
time for a top
I
end.
think so. If I don't hear it, if it gets to 700, 750, you know, I can think about it then.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never asked anybody yet what that job is to do lifters in a cam. You have to pull
I
it up.
wouldn't even have to do the cam. I think if you just did lifters,
Even if it was making those noises, it couldn't be doing damage. So
you'd see it on the rollers.
Okay.
On the rollers
the
of the
ones,
lifters.
yeah, you can pull, when you have them pulled out, you can look down in and see what the cam
But
looks
if you had to do the cam, does the cab have to come off and all that stuff? Or do you
I
do-
think
oh,
the
yeah,
cab has to.
okay.
The
Yeah, 'cause
cab
you-
might have to come off anyway to get
Yeah.
down into where the lifters are at.
But the engine might not have to come out.
Yeah, but the engine probably.
But just that, okay.
Pull the heads off to get the lifters out.
Yep.
Tell us the story about bypass filter at the Ford dealership. They hooked it back up for you, right, with the 900,000 mile engine. Still have your warranty with
Yeah.
the bypass filter hooked up because most like
This
some of our
this
biggest,
new engine has
Yeah.
the bypass filter on it. They hooked
So
it up
most
and said
people
it still
always
has the
like
warranty.
one of
Yeah.
our biggest questions is this going to void warranty?
It shouldn't void a. Oh, okay, Ford, you're gonna void my warranty for making your engine better? Does that make any sense?
For
No, you should
filtering
thank me
oil
because
more.
you're not gonna have to do anything.
Yeah.
So thank me.
But the first one, when you bought the truck brand new, you were worried about the warranty.
I was.
and so you waited.
I did.
But then when they replaced the engine, you said, "Can you hook up the bypass filter again?" And
I didn't
they're
even
like,
ask them, they just
"Absolutely."
did
Oh,
it.
they just did it.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Even better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't void warranty.
And they watch
can't
Dave's
void
video
warranty
too,
because-
and your videos, and they can't believe how it looked on the inside.
Yeah.
Like
I can't believe it. I was there
How
looking
about
at
this?
it.
Like all the dealers around, and a lot of you people out there probably know this, but they have, you go in for an oil change or something, like, oh, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I'm ready for another oil change, pretty much, or close. So that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But I buy a lot of parts and do a lot of service at my dealer. Like he would even tell you that anything they recommend I do. If I get a little play in a tie rod end, if I get a little play in a ball joint, change it. Because by the time I get back there, I'm going to put 15,000 miles on, and I'm going to need one when I'm gone somewhere. So they're good about getting me in. They could be backed up for 2 months, and I can call, and they'll be like, okay, how about tomorrow? Okay, yeah. I'll leave the truck for the day, and or I'll drop it off that day that I asked them, and then I'll pick it up the next day. They can use it as filler work, but as long as people aren't jackasses to the people they're wanting to get some help from, a lot of times they're willing to work with you. And so I just try to be nice and courteous and respectful, and people treat you the same way. So if any people have a hard time getting service, then try a different approach maybe. I don't know. Fuel additive is not snake oil. Bypass filter is not snake oil. If anybody's saying that, then they're smoking too much dope. Or something.
Not
Heroin,
educated,
I don't know.
something?
Because
Well, okay. Tell me that's snake oil. Fuel additive is snake oil. That's 893,000 miles on a CP4 pump, and it is polished. There isn't a scratch on it. You just
there's a couple little lines on these
It's-
rollers,
yeah, but it's gorgeous.
but that's probably from a little bit of contaminated fuel.
The proof is in the pudding.
Well, the
It's
other
not
thing
snake.
too,
It's proof right there.
there's a guy that does a lot of informative videos too. His name is Lake Speed Jr. And he's a certified tribologist, which was the guy who started this company, is the same, a tribologist, which is I think an expert in oil and lubrication and wearing of metals and stuff like that. And he ran tests on all the fuel additives, and he said they definitely work. But he also ran tests on oil additives, not
different
oil
oils.
with additives in it, adding an additive in like Lucas oil, for instance. He said if you're using Lucas oil, which I did, I'm guilty of this. I used to use Lucas oil. He said, if you're using Lucas oil, you're just throwing money away, literally throwing it away. He did all kinds of scientific experiments, wearing the metal, mixing it with the oil, the proper mix rate, everything, and testing it. And he said the verdict is in. I'm paraphrasing, but pretty much you're wasting your money. People swear by it, and they'll still do it, but that's fine. I did it for a lot of miles, but then when I saw that, I'm like, well, I'm not going to waste money on that anymore, so I just stopped. But fuel additive, definitely, I'll never put any fuel in without an additive. Period. End of story. If you want to call it snake oil, fine, call it snake oil. But you know what? I'm going to keep using my pump. And you can go and spend 10 grand on fixing your truck.
The proof is right there. There, fuel additive, and then the other proof is the bearings that we tore out of your engine. There's no wear on them. So yeah, go ahead and call it snake oil. It's a miracle. It's insane the lack of wear on any component of this engine.
To back up a little bit, I didn't go trouble-free my whole time. I had to replace, so I had the original turbo in it until 675,000 miles. Same with the injectors. I replaced them at the same time.
But they weren't bad. You did it.
They weren't bad.
Right?
I was getting some codes about contribution balance codes,
Okay.
but when the tech took them out, so there was probably something going on inside, but the injectors were still silver. So I laugh when I say it because he showed me
They
other
should be
ones.
black.
Right, and they were still silver. There was a couple spots of carbon on it, but not like he said they should have. I mean, they should have looked like this.
Yeah, they should have been black.
But they were pretty
Still silver
pretty
tip,
remarkable. Yeah, and I was like, wow. He goes, well, because he really made me kind of angry because he said, you probably didn't even need to do this, and I was like, oh, great, 5,000 extra bucks.
Thanks
So
for
I didn't
saving
even
that
do
for
it.
me.
Yeah.
Would you like to hand it back?
And I was like, why? And he was like, look at them. They're supposed to be black. So I was like, wow. So that was 675K. That was my first turbo and my first injectors with this new engine. They told me that from my engine warranty, anything the coolant and the oil and the fuel touch had to be new. So it's pretty much everything is new in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So turbo, intakes, I put the Mishimoto degas tanks in and Mishimoto radiator that's currently leaking, thanks. And,
They're replacing it for you.
They're sending me one
They're
of the,
standing there. They're standing by their product. That's
yeah, they're
good.
gonna send me one. I wanted to use the Mishimoto stuff because the truck ran pretty warm, ran pretty hot. And I don't know if that's because the engine was getting old. I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Looking at the inside of your engine, I don't think that had anything to do with it.
Then I'm way more impressed.
I think it had probably more to do with your radiator itself, because I've cleaned my radiator in my Duramax.
Yeah,
I didn't get above 130 degrees
yeah.
on my engine coolant temp driving here this morning.
Yeah, I was hauling a camper. My coolant temp would be, let's see, if I was coming across I-80, the bottom of Wyoming, so like to Utah, there's some really elevation there and hills, and I would get, my coolant would probably be 225, easy. My transmission around the same 225. My oil would be at like 250, 245. Yep, that's with this cooler. Yeah. Now with this Mishimoto stuff, my oil didn't get past. Actually, the biggest hills and the highest elevation I got 213 was the highest I got.
On your oil?
Yep. It was pretty impressed with that.
So a lot of that is your coolant.
Okay.
Your coolant drives it,
Yeah.
and your radiator drives your coolant. Now,
Okay.
you've got fan,
Yeah.
but you've got airflow as well. So I'm betting your radiator, was that the original radiator then?
God no.
Okay.
I went through a few of those.
Okay, because literally I took my 200,000 mile Duramax radiator stack apart and
Yeah.
I washed it,
Yeah.
and I went from having 240 degree coolant
Yeah.
and high transmission temperatures to
Even,
I never touch 200 ever.
Yeah. Even after I replaced them, it was still high.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just always high.
That's weird.
And then, but now my coolant it hasn't gone over like 192.
That's awesome.
Going up
Pulling
hills,
campers.
everything. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then, but my trannies, that Mishimoto, I know this is insane diesel, but that Mishimoto transmission cooler, I would highly recommend to anybody. I was in the, like I said, 220s, and now I think I haven't gotten past 150 yet. Holland campers uphill and elevation and everything.
That's awesome.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculously good.
And that I speak, coolant drives everything else. That's how it is in my Duramax because of where the transmission cooler is and everything else. As soon I can watch my coolant temperature climb, and then the transmission follows.
Yeah.
And they just tag each other depending on what the grade is and what the load is and all that. But it's
And with the Mission motor, the degas tanks I hold, and the radiator's bigger too, because I have the radiator now too. So I think it's an extra 4 gallons of coolant too. You have to have good maintenance, but if I didn't have that filter, it wouldn't have. The best maintenance in the world wouldn't have lasted 900,000 miles. I don't think.
No,
I mean, who knows, right? Because I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And I won't ever again. I'll tell you that. I won't ever again. Actually, I'm gonna come down here sometime, and Tanner doesn't know this yet, but he's gonna put a filter in my wife's Volkswagen. Hopefully, something gonna be coming up where the truck's gonna be down in Utah for a week or so coming up. So sometime, and then I'll bring her car. Maybe I'll tow her car in a trailer, and we'll spend the week in Utah, and then we can get one of those put in her Volkswagen. That's what.
got one in my Volkswagen.
She doesn't know that yet, but she will now. I always do good maintenance, but I don't think good maintenance would do what this did without the filter.
It's not enough.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, we're kind of speculating here, but if you think about the science of it, you have, with the bypass filter, you have clean oil 100% of the time.
Right.
When you don't have the bypass filter on, you have clean oil when you dump it in. And the longer you drive it, the dirtier it gets, the more contaminants get in it, the more it wears your parts.
Right. Think of a sandblaster, right? You want to take the paint off some metal and repaint it, right? You're going to take all the paint off sandblasting. You leave all that dirty oil with the soot and everything in your engine, you're just sandblasting the inside of your engine. There goes your cross hatching, there goes this, there goes that, everything, gone.
You see it in the bearings of my Jeep engine.
Yeah.
They're not polished, they're grimy. You can see actual sand particles that went between the journal and the bearing.
Yeah.
You can see it in the metal journal, and you can see it in the softer metal bearing bolt.
Yeah. These filters, which are not toilet paper rolls, by the way. Oh, it's nothing but a toilet paper roll.
No, far from it.
Yeah.
Very much far from it.
I mean, I get it. Maybe it's an 80-year-old guy, and that's what they were, 50 years ago. A toilet paper roll. I mean, they were, but they're not anymore. I mean, come on. Things change. It's called technology. Not toilet paper. No, not toilet paper.
No, it's a synthetic fiber, tightly rolled synthetic fiber that is a progressive filter from 10 micron at the top to 1 micron at the bottom.
Actually, you know what? Some of these people that think it's toilet paper, try to use it as toilet paper and tell me what kind of rash you get. And then, we can talk about this again. It's not toilet paper. It's way more.
It looks similar.
The
in
shape,
camera.
that's it, right?
Yeah, the shape.
Yeah.
And the color, I guess.
I know. Well, maybe Tanner can change the color to light blue or something. With that engine that I wish I would know that you guys were going to get it and bring it to Dave's is that I would have saved my filters. When it blew up.
Yeah.
I would have saved my filter, the OEM filter, and the filter element of the bypass filter, but I had no idea.
Skeptics say that there's no way that you've got 900,000 miles on this truck. Should we go turn it on?
You can, yeah. You can go turn it on.
Key in it?
Yep. Actually put
There.
30.
How do you have to turn it on? It just pops up. 922,000 miles.
Yes, I put
322
30,000 miles on it since the engine swap.
in September.
November 4th
November 4th
is when I picked it
when
up.
he picked it up to start driving it. So since November 4th, it's went from 893,000 to 922.
With a bunch of time off. Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Christmas and New Year's, and my son's birthday is January 5th, so I was home a little bit longer.
Yep. You have records from Ford.
I never kept all of them, but they have them.
Uh-huh.
My service advisor is trying to figure out how to formulate his email so he can send them to me.
Okay.
But yes, I have that. She got from Ford through her connections, like a build sheet. So we
Okay.
have the actual serial number of my engine.
Your
that's
block
at-
casting number.
Yes. So
Awesome.
I have those numbers.
So that we
so
can
you can
prove
see
that.
it. Yeah. So you can see the number. The engine that's currently still at Dave's was the engine that came out of the factory. So
So it's got the same casting number
yeah.
as what was the build sheet of the truck in 2017.
Right, and that came from, a person that has some connections because she actually works for Ford Motor Company and she got the information. Because it's not easy to find, believe it or not.
No.
It's not easy to find. You would think that like on the old Corvettes and stuff, part of the VIN number is the casting from the block, and it's just not like that anymore.
No, they make way too
So
many
she
cars.
had to make a bunch of calls and talk to her bosses, and anyway, she got the number through Ford Motor Company, and it's the same number that's on the engine. So how about this? Instead of hating everybody, why don't you buy one of these freaking filters and then drive your truck for 900,000 miles and take care of it, and then get back on here and say sorry.
I may have been wrong.
Not I may have been. There's no may have been wrong about it.
I wouldn't have believed it if I saw it, if I hadn't saw it either. I'd have been like, there's no way there's 900,000 miles on those variants. They've swapped the engine somewhere, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Except for I saw it with my own eyes.
I was poking around on YouTube and trying to figure out a way to make my truck last longer and save money, do less oil changes, and I came across this, that AMSOIL one, and there were reviews about the AMSOIL one about it clogging up, and I was like, I don't want to deal with that, but I had no bad reviews about this, so I was like, give it a try. And
Turned out all right for you.
yeah, turned out great.